What's going on, Fightful Faithful? Welcome back to another interview here on Fightful Overbooked. Today we are sitting down with Mr. Jack Moody, an Irish pro wrestler who is currently based in the UK and has wrestled across the US as well. How are you doing today, Jack?
Doing very well. Thanks for having me, Corey. You're like the Kent Brockman of wrestling right now. So
Thank you.
nice to finally meet you.
Thanks for that, man. And just starting, we'll start off at the beginning. You did start training wrestling at an older age compared to a lot of other talent at 32 years old. But what was that experience like for you just coming in? Was there a kind of any dismissive comments or anything just because of your age in general, or was it kind of
No,
just?
honestly, nobody. It never really came up. It's only kind of come up now more recently when people are just like, "Oh, by the way, what age are you?" And they're often surprised, I guess. So when I started, like that wasn't an issue. I mean, it was more of an issue in my head, in the sense that I'm like, well, you know, I'm 32. The prospects here, like, how is my body going to react to bumping regularly? I'm probably going to be more injury prone at this age. So that was more, the doubts were mainly in my own head in terms of like how far can I go, and what are the physical limitations based on my age. But I guess I'm lucky in that I've kind of kept myself in relatively good shape, and like flexibility wise, mobility wise. So I've probably managed to like keep the hands of time back a bit, and it's kind of given me a window now to go as further than I anticipated probably. I guess the one benefit of starting late is there's a sense of urgency around it, based on the fact that I'm not 18. I don't have 2 decades to pursue this. Now, I mean, who knows? I could be like staying and having my last match 64 and coming down from the rafters somewhere in 30 years time. But the age thing has probably motivated me to like just accelerate my development as much as possible and treat it like an academic study, as if I was going back to college to do a master's. Like, what are the steps necessary to accelerate my learning? Where do I need to take myself to absorb as much info as possible, and to kind of interact with different styles and different wrestlers and different promotions. So the age has actually kind of worked in my favor, I guess, because it has propelled me, given me a kind of a flame to kind of just go for it, like with an intensity that I probably wouldn't have at 18. So yeah, it's been there have been injuries along the way for sure, and they are probably age related, but it hasn't really kept me from exceeding my own expectations in a 2-year window.
And just with regards to your training, obviously you're trained in kind of two different sections early on. First was Fight Factory in Ireland, and then you went to the US, and you actually trained under two pretty well known names, Shawn Spears and Tyler Breeze. And I'm just wondering, what was it kind of like first to start off training in Ireland, and then suddenly, what was there a culture shock? Was there a lot of changes? Was there anything different compared to Fight Factory? Because I know Fight Factory is obviously one of the biggest schools in Ireland, and but I'm just curious what those two experiences were like together, really.
Yeah, two parallel tracks, really. I mean, I guess Florida isn't quite as exotic as Dublin, so that was probably the biggest adjustment weather-wise. I guess there's very few commonalities, I would say. Like, the biggest difference is probably the training style. Like, Fight Factory has a kind of a fairly well-renowned emphasis on catch as catch can, chain wrestling, whereas in the US more broadly, that's just not doesn't really feature high on the kind of curriculum of most schools. So if you can kind of master that art and showcase it in the US, you will automatically stand out. So I owe a lot to Fight Factory for kind of giving me a really, really good grounding in that style, which I have like really come to appreciate and love. And it's going to give me a great platform to go on to other countries and showcase that. But Florida and Flatbacks has a real, it's kind of a PC style training. Like Spears and Breeze they've been to WWE and AEW, and they know exactly what the training regimen is like in the PC. So they are all about fundamentals, and they basically take you through, like, it's an 8-week course, and it's an 8-week intensive cardiovascular experience, because if you don't have that, you won't get a shot in either promotion. So it was really, having done, I don't know, maybe a year of training, to kind of go and hone in on the fundamentals in an environment that is ideally going to set you up for a tryout somewhere, was really, really cool. And obviously very cool to learn under both of those guys, who have so much experience and a wealth of knowledge. But yeah, super intensive, like cardio wise. That was probably the biggest adjustment initially, was like, this is going to be intense. And it was an amazing experience to be based in Florida for so long. And yeah, just a lovely weather, and you kind of feel like you're in this wrestling ecosystem, because there's so many wrestlers there that are based there for their work. Like, you just be in the gym lifting weights, and there's Malachi Black walking by, so you're constantly you kind of get the sense that this is the center of the universe for wrestling. So yeah, really, really cool experience, and it's definitely stood to me in my development as I've progressed.
Just while we're on the topic of Shawn Spears and Tyler Breeze, and obviously Spears did make his return to NXT very recently on Tuesday, Shawn. Just wondering what your reaction kind of was, that being someone who trained so closely under him.
Yeah, very pleasantly surprised, honestly. I know he had, I mean, his AEW run, I'd say he's probably been open about this in interviews, that like he felt there's been things left on the table. Like he still has a lot of gas in the tank, and he is an amazing promo. And I don't think he got to showcase that in AEW, aside from a couple of instances. So I think he's a natural fit. He lives in Florida. He's very highly respected among trainees and wrestlers alike. And he does have a lot to offer. Like, he's got a great look, great promo, great presence. So I was just pleasantly surprised. Yeah, like most people, I just turned on Twitter on Wednesday morning and saw it. So I was like very happy for him, because I know he kind of prides himself on his work, and he knows he has more to give. And there's probably no limit now in terms of where he can go in NXT, and it could turn into a main roster run on his own terms this time, which would be great.
And just moving on, we're just a little now. Right now, you are based in the UK, but beforehand you were based in the US. And I'm just wondering, like, for you, what are the key differences to where you're based? Like, for the UK, obviously you've been working all over Europe in recent months, Portugal mainly. You've been there quite a bit, and I'm just wondering, like, what is the comparison for you? Because obviously there's a lot more travel, I feel like, involved when you're based in Europe versus the US, because it's a lot easier to get around in the US, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, if you fly or drive, not if you get the train or bus. That's probably, I mean, I'd say there's similar levels of opportunity in the US and the UK. I would say when the shift from Dublin to US opened up so many opportunities to wrestle, because there's so many promotions, there's so many shows happening regularly. Whereas obviously in Dublin, there's kind of a limited, it's a saturated market, and there's only so many shows you can be on. So the US probably has a similar level of opportunity as the UK here. And I'm kind of now set to announce a couple of upcoming bookings here in and around London, which I'm very excited about. And the great thing is, you're only a train away from Bristol, Brighton, Manchester. If you're willing to travel, there's really good infrastructure here to get to these places. Like, just yesterday, I was training with Jordan Breaks down in Ramsgate. And like, he's exactly the type of wrestler I want to learn from. So the kind of the accessibility factor of all these amazing wrestlers here is a huge bonus. And I do hope to get up to Manchester. I know Chris Ridgway is based there. So all of these wrestlers that I've admired are now kind of not on my doorstep, but they are closer than before. So it kind of encourages me to kind of get out there and go to different promotions, go to different cities, while just taking the train and not having to fly. So that's good.
And we'll move over a little now to more the in-ring kind of stuff. A move that you've really kind of used a lot throughout your career is the octopus stretch. And I'm curious what the origins of you using that move are. What made you want to use it so regularly, and what separates it from other people who use it?
That's a good question. The origin is probably I mean, Jonathan Gresham has come to Fight Factory a number of times over the past 2 years, and I've been lucky to train with him. Not in the most recent run, but the one prior to that. So that was probably the first introduction in person I had to it. And I'd say I used to train very regularly with LJ and Jay Steins in Dublin. And we would just be, messing around with different sequences and different chain sequences and transitions. And it just kind of became you could get into it from any position. I guess with my style and like the International Man of Mystery, the idea is I can end a match in so many different ways, and there's so many different pin combinations that I can pull out and so many reversals that I can pull out. So the octopus now has kind of become, and I was actually just talking to Jordan Breaks about this yesterday, that it used to be called the 3-in-1. And I was like, curry sauce, chips, and rice. And he's like, what are you talking about? Apparently the 3-in-1 isn't a thing here, or 4-in-1. But apparently the origin of the octopus is a 3-in-1 because you've got 3 limbs. You're manipulating 3 limbs. So now it has become there's more to the move than now I kind of add in different aspects. So like, just if they're not going to tap out, I can put in like a chokehold. If they're not choking that way, I can wrap them into an even more elaborate submission or into a crucifix. So it just kind of fits my gimmick, my wrestling style, and you can put it on anyone. So even people say, oh, you couldn't do that move on a big person. The octopus is probably easier to do on a big person given they're a stronger base. And I can sit on top of them and, dig in my elbows, and it just seemed to fit my style, and I can incorporate it into so many different sequences. So it's just become the go-to move. I actually called it the Irish Goodbye in America, and now LJ has taken that name for a much more impressive move. You've probably seen it.
Yeah, I have seen it. All right, very impressive, but bit sly of him there a little bit there.
I'll let him have it. I mean, he's taught me so much that I'll let that one slide.
And sticking with in-ring, just is there anyone that you've worked a match with that you've come out of feeling like you learned so much from it? Who is someone that you've stepped into the ring with and you came out the other side and you felt like you've just learned so much, not even so much as training, but like a full-on match like kind of situation?
Yeah. Actually, you could go as recently as this weekend in Portugal with a wrestler by the name of Tamura, who is the president of the Heat Up promotion in Japan. So there's a bit of a language barrier there. Like, my Japanese is obviously terrible. He's not fluent in English, but he can communicate freely and easily. But that experience of trying to communicate mid-match when we're both not proficient in each other's language, and just to kind of get to where we need to go without communicating like overtly, So that was a really cool experience because, wrestling in Japan is something I would love to do. And getting the chance to wrestle with someone like Tamura, who has like 40 years experience, which is absolutely insane. And for that to work out and to go well and to get good feedback, and to just kind of listen to him mid-match in terms of wait, hold on, maybe now, his sense of timing is much better than mine, obviously. So that was a really cool experience. And it's, fresh in my memory from this past weekend.
And we'll go back a little bit to your training a little more. Recently, you did post on social media that you were at the RevPro Academy training with them. You were at high stakes. You did for the Oku Osprey match. What's that experience been like working in the RevPro Academy and being in the building for that match? Because it's just one of those matches that you just have to ask about.
Yeah, no, it really was insane, and it's very close to where I'm living. It was only about an hour away, so it was kind of a no-brainer. But yeah, it was kind of spectacular to have seen, because like Michael Oku was at the training school on the Wednesday, where prior to the match, like so chill, nonchalant, and then he goes on and has one of the greatest matches of all time. So it's just kind of inspiring to see that level of wrestling being presented in such a cool venue as well, the Crystal Palace Sports Arena, I think it was. So they've been very welcoming, and I've also been training at Greg Burridge's school the London School of Lucha Libre. So definitely trying to diversify my exposure to different schools, and been down in Ramsgate yesterday with Jordan Breaks. So yeah, these are all amazing outlets to have on my doorstep, and that's one of the major benefits of being here in London is the number of schools, the number of promotions is much higher, and that means I can get more reps in than I probably would otherwise, and that's kind of the name of the game at the moment.
And you've been vocal in the past about how important being an Irish wrestler is to you, and you bring the tricolour out in your entrance. For you, being an Irish, obviously we're a small island, we don't have that much representation in the world of wrestling, but do you keep up with the Irish wrestling scene, the OTT, everything that's going on over here? Like, is that something that's constantly something you're checking up on?
Oh, very much so. Like, I'm still very good friends with lots of the lads in Fight Factory. So we talk regularly, and there's obviously going to be plans for me to come back as much as possible to train with them. And, I'll welcome them over here, and they can stay with me if they ever want to pursue opportunities in and around London. But yeah, very much on top of what's happening. I mean, your reporting is helping make that easier, and you're doing a great job in terms of showcasing the Irish talent and the Irish scene on a global stage. So I think everyone's very appreciative of you for that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back to Dublin, even just to train or perform if there's a show and the timing works out. I'd be very excited to make my return, because I've spent so much time outside Ireland that anytime I do go home, it is kind of a homecoming. And yeah, it's always a great time.
And just one final question before I do let you go. We did at the start, obviously, we did talk about your late start and how it's been, and something that has kind of intensified your desire to just keep pushing forward.
Mm-hmm.
And for other late starters, is that the advice you'd give? Just keep going 100%, try and make up for lost time. Is that kind of the advice you'd give?
Yeah, that is great advice, because I think if you're willing to start at this stage, you have to realize that the window is shorter for you than most others who are starting at an earlier age. So if you're willing to start, there's probably no point. Well, it depends what you want to get out of it, I guess. But like, if you're going to start at this stage, it kind of has to be not an all or nothing thing. You really have to make it a kind of a huge aspect of your life, and you need to figure out how to fit in wrestling and gym training and diet and all of these things that you don't really have to think about at 18 or 19. So I think if you're willing to step into the ring at this age and start training, it's in your best interest to just treat it like a master's program. But also, I would caveat that with, be mindful of your own body, and at this age, at an older age, you are more susceptible to injuries, and I've had to deal with injuries as a result of going hell for leather and kind of ignoring signs of, oh, maybe I should like rest a little bit, or rest my shoulder, or rest my back. So there is risks involved in going hell for leather, but it ultimately will pay off. So yeah, if anyone's in a similar boat, I mean, I was daydreaming about this for years pre-pandemic. And then post-pandemic, it was just like a springboard of like, this, it's now or never. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure I have the best chance of succeeding. So yeah, it's just being mindful of your body and your diet, and make sure you're training with the right people, and network your ass off. That's like the cheat code for wrestling. It's traveling to different places, like you would in any line of work, like going to a conference, you handing out cards, you are trying to network and build your connections and build your own network. So that's a hugely important aspect that has helped me out. So I would encourage people to kind of keep all those factors in mind. And yeah, like at 32, you still have, you can do this for a decade plus if you want. So people who are at that age and say, there's no point, there's plenty of point in doing it, because you have more time than you think. And you'll probably surprise yourself in terms of how far you can go if you treat it seriously and kind of create a routine that is sustainable for your body and your career as well, depending on what you do for work outside of it.
Thank you very much for sitting down with me today, Jack. You've been brilliant. That is some absolutely excellent advice. But before we do go, do you want to tell people where they can find you, where you're going to be, upcoming bookings for people to check you out?
Yeah, sure. If anyone wants to follow me, I'm most active on Twitter. So that's at Jack Moody Pro. I do have an Instagram account, but I don't post on it. I just use it to communicate with people who use it. Upcoming bookings, I have several here in the UK that I'll be announcing soon. And then beyond that, I'm making my Swedish debut for Freedom Pro in early April. And then the next week, I'm making my debut in Finland for Slam. So there are 2 new countries to add to the list. And yeah, more to come in terms of UK announcements. But for the time being, at Jack Moody Pro on Twitter. And yeah, I really appreciate your time, Corey, and hope to do this again soon.
Absolutely, Jack. Absolutely. If you guys are new to Fightful Overbooked, make sure to like this video, subscribe for more interviews. We're going to be continuing to do all interviews across Irish, UK, European talents. And yeah, guys, see you guys in the next one.
Cheers.